Presented by Prize Picks. Get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 and use the promo code. Welcome to Light Years. Tommy, we're recording this before Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals, so maybe the Pacers have clinched, maybe the series got extended, and we're not going to talk about that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little about the Thunder here, considering, we did spend all year kind of saying we wanted the Thunder. We thought they'd be a good matchup for the Warriors. And I don't really regret any of my opinions on that sort of thing, but I do want to give them credit because they've been really impressive in the playoffs and a deserved finals trip.
Yeah, 100% deserve. And I've definitely been a little bit of a Thunder hater this season. And it's more just been like contrarianism with everybody calling them an all-time team before they had won a single playoff series this year. I was like, let's at least pump the brakes a little bit. But, in general, I am a fan of a lot of the guys on the Thunder. Like, I was a huge SGA guy before the draft, and I've waxed and waned on that a little bit because the grifting stuff gets annoying, and a lot of the talk surrounding him has just annoyed me. But I loved him coming out of Kentucky. I was a huge Chet guy. I thought he should have went number one, and I think that the Magic would have been better off picking him number one. As good as Paulo is, I think Chet's more versatile, and I think he's more scalable as a player. I've always loved Chet. Obviously, Caruso and Hartenstein were amazing offseason signings that kind of it's been the Thunder's version of the Iguodala trade for the Warriors. And I think that's kind of the direction we want to take this, right? And then obviously Jalen Williams has just shown steady growth over the last couple of years. And even if you do kind of an age comparison of a lot of their guys, so the Warriors winning their first title in 2014-15, the ages of a lot of their best players and then their role players are very, very similar.
Yeah, I mean, they've been the best team in the league all year, and they did what they were expected to do, which is run through the West. And you know what? This is I always go to this when people are like, oh, it's unfair the Warriors had to play every other day. It's not unfair. Get a higher seed and take care of your business early, and you don't run into those issues. The Warriors had to go 7 games against Houston. They had an opportunity to close them in 5. They ended up going 7. The hammy was a direct result of how much force they had to exert. But even farther than that, being the 7 seed was a function of throwing away the first 50 games of the season, right? They got Jimmy at game number 50 and the season turned around. The 33 games post Jimmy trade, they went 24-9?
I believe so.
Yeah, they were 24-9, and it was something like 21-3 or 4 when all the main guys played. Mm-hmm. So they were good, but there's only so much you can do when you're 24-25 to start the season. Whereas the Thunder, they kicked everyone's ass from October till the end of the season. They were able to rest guys down the stretch because they clearly got the number 1 seed. They got the most advantageous matchup in the first round. They got a Grizzlies squad that was on the verge of quitting anyway. So there's a sweep. They probably had a little more in the tank against their toughest matchup of the playoffs, Denver, because they had a sweep that round. I think they beat Denver purely because they had a sweep. They had fresher legs, and Denver had to go 7 back-to-back series. I really think it's that simple. Jokic, in a world where the Nuggets were steadier and got a better matchup and didn't have to go that way, they wouldn't have they might not have lost that series, right?
Yep.
But all this kind of speaks to, you build something the right way and commit to it, you put yourself in a better position. I think that's a thing I always look at with the Thunder that I like. Shai's exceptionally talented, deserved the MVP for his production this year. Yep. Not my favorite player to watch. That's a personal aesthetic choice. It's nothing to take away from him as a player, but as a team, they just established an identity from day one and committed to it and built around it. And I can't hate on that. I've been a Sam Presti guy for his entire run. And the one thing that always stands through with the Thunder teams, whether he's had more talent or less talent, is they're non-drama. There doesn't really feel to ever be these added agendas. Even if they're there under the surface, you never really see them come together. They're always kind of about the mission at hand. When they're rebuilding, they rebuild. When they're going for it, they go for it. But they try to build things organically.
And I think that's a really good point because you can even look back at kind of the KD, Russ, Harden era and post Thunder, KD is not the easiest guy to deal with. Harden is not the easiest guy to deal with. But there, you never really heard a lot of that tension bubble to the surface. They're very Spursy in that way, where like they kind of keep everything in house, you know.
The Spurs organization, if you didn't know.
Right. Exactly. No, Presti's, he's directly from that tree. So like it makes a lot of sense. Smaller market, there's a lot of parallels there as well. But yeah, I think, if we want to stay on the point of like how it compares to kind of the early dynasty Warriors, like they've built a team with like a true number one engine who can like carry your offense through some like very defensively slanted lineups, which is like kind of the hallmark of those early dynasty Warriors. Like Clay kind of progressively got better over the years, but he was only 25 years old when they won the first championship. And he probably wasn't fully ready to be that true second option, which is why Andre really had to step up offensively in the finals. But like, the Warriors were able to play these incredibly like defensive oriented lineups because their offensive engine was so good. And you see a lot of that with the Thunder, where like most of their guys are kind of more defensive focused players, but because they, number one, play so hard and they create so many turnovers and they get the tempo where they want it. And two, because, Shea can create shots in a phone booth, you're able to operate like that.
Yeah. By the way, Jalen Williams is averaging 26 and 5 in the playoffs, which is more than Clay averaged in 2015. Mm-hmm. I think the more interesting part of kind of is like the age thing is the first place you start on it. The last team who had two of their core big three be guys on rookie contracts, the 2015 Warriors. Yeah. In some ways, it felt like the 2015 Warriors skipped a step. Like Steph was in year 6, I believe, 6 or 7. But Clay was in year 4. Draymond was in year 3. Harrison Barnes was in year 3. None of those guys had been paid, which allowed them to go out and get Iguodala and Bogut. It allowed them to get like big time winning veterans on like sizable contracts. And those guys were, you were able to afford that because Klay Thompson's on the rookie scale at that point. The Thunder have the same thing with like, look, Shea's a max player, a deserving max player, year 6, year 7, his year, but Jalen Williams and Chet are in year 3, which allowed them, to your point, the financial flexibility to go get Hartenstein and Caruso, which is like their version of Bogut. And
are there like more perfect comparisons playstyle wise for like Caruso to Iguodala and Hartenstein to Bogut? Sure. Like the similarities between those two players, and I think, or those 4 players, I should say. And I think, if Presti took anything from his matchups with the Warriors, the KD era, Russ era Thunder versus kind of the early dynasty Warriors. Mm-hmm. A lot of what Presti did back in that era, it was like just find guys who play defense, and like everything else they do doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter where they can shoot or pass or like do any of these other things. I think what he specified this time around was like, yes, those guys need to be able to defend, and obviously Caruso is one of the best defenders in the NBA, but they also have incredible ancillary skills. Caruso's a great passer and a great cutter. Hartenstein is a phenomenal passer as a big man, has that floater game. Whereas like before they got like a Dion Waiters or a Serge Ibaka or like these very limited.
Or just Roberson. Like Roberson was a phenomenal defender, but
he couldn't do
his off. Yeah, you couldn't. And the Warriors got him off the floor because they were like, we're not going to guard you. We're going to dare you to hit shots, right? Now he's got guys like Caruso, to your point. It's like you have to guard him. He's smart enough to do a bunch of different things. So to your point, he'll cut to the rim. He's a very good passer. You can run a dribble handoff with him. He can also stick an open shot. He is a lot like Andre in the forget the percentage. He'll hit just enough of them when you need him to,
And they're the most backbreaking ones always.
Yeah. Because it's the guy the defense wants to shoot the ball. You're like, okay, it's not Shea. It's not this. It's like, oh no, he hit it. It sucks.
How many times would the opponent be making a run with the lead's like cut to 4 and Andre's wide open on the wing, and then all of a sudden he sticks it and the air just comes out of the opposing arena?
Yeah.
It happened countless times over the dynasty run.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know who's going to come out of the East. Like obviously everyone thinks it's going to be the Pacers at this point, but like whoever it is, OKC is going to be the heavy betting favorite.
As they should be.
And they should be. They've been the best team in the league all year. I mean, the core stuff is also just it's interesting to compare them. I think the comparison pretty much stops there because their core 3 is so different stylistically than the Warriors' core 3. Just the reality of it. Shea's mid-range assassin, dribble, get into the lane. Jalen Williams plays off them, but kind of has a similar style. He's more likely to take a 3, but he's not a shooter by any means.
No.
Whereas, Steph and Clay are the shooters of this generation and maybe any generation, really, right? I think the one thing that is similar about the 2 core 3s is they genuinely like playing with each other. That's the one thing that sticks out with the Thunder. It does not feel like there's an agenda where Jalen Williams, who's good enough to average 25 to 30 points on like a middling team, like he could play the I want to be the man card.
Yeah.
Probably good. He seems so happy in his situation. And then Chet, to your point, like he's probably more talented than Jalen Williams. If he was wired differently, he could also be like, man, I should be getting 18, 20 shots a game. But he didn't seem to care. They seemed like they seem genuinely happy playing together and what they've built. And I'd always say that was one of the defining characteristics of the Warriors core 3 too. Clay obviously is proud of who he is as a player, but I don't think he ever had a desire to like, I want to go out there and prove I can score 30 on my own team.
No, he didn't. And I mean, it's definitely not the same, but their top two guys are somewhat duplicative in their skill sets, just like Steph and Clay were.
Yeah,
like Shea's kind of just the better version of SGA. Steph was just kind of like the better version offensively of Clay. And the funny thing is, like Chet and like Pete Draymond are somewhat similar. Chet has a lot more offensive talent. He's way bigger. He's more athletic, but like kind of this do-it-all defender who can basically guard anybody on the floor. And then offensively, I think Chet's going to be much better offensively at his peak, and he probably already is, than peak Draymond, but like can step out and hit the three as a big, can take you off the dribble, smart passer. And this is where it really differs is the finishing. Like Chet's a fully above the rim finisher with some like, he also has some like touch around the rim, even if he's not finishing it with a dunk. Draymond never really had that. But yeah, it really is funny. Like dynasties are always kind of built the same way. For lack of better terms, like it does kind of have to be defensively focused in a way with an offensive engine who is good enough to carry those defensive lineups because the money doesn't work any other way.
Yeah, and defense travels. Games get gritty, and you just can't win play. Like it's true in every sport, by the way. It's when have you ever seen a baseball team win who can't pitch? In the playoffs, it always comes down to like, can you pitch? Can you defend? Can you play clean baseball on that end? And then who's going to come up with some big hits? Who's it going to be? Football, same thing. I can't really think of many Super Bowls that are won by teams who play 40 to 38 games. It happens maybe once every now and then, but like most of the time you need to be able to really defend, and then you need to be able to be smart on the other end of the floor. And hopefully you have one playmaker who can make the whole thing go. Right. So it's just the nature of elimination sports. You got to always be able to defend. I'll say the other thing about Chet.
The bats are going to go cold at some point, which is kind of your point. Like that happened to Boston this year. They lost Porzingis essentially. Their defense suffered a little bit, and they go down 2-0 to the Knicks because they have two bad stretches of shooting that put them in a hole.
And the year before when they won, the biggest difference between their 2024 Celtics team and the ones 3 years prior, even the 2022 one, I would say Drew Holiday for Marcus Smart is a significantly larger upgrade than it would ever get credit for publicly. That's the difference between a good defender and a Hall of Fame caliber defender. It's like, that's the difference between, like Harrison Barnes, who's a good defender, and Andre Iguodala, who's like a GOAT level defender, and people don't talk about defense in those terms. And I would say that was also Boston's big change there. They got a little more mature, but they added the right type of defensive anchor, and so they could ride through those variances because they're a super variant shooting team, right?
Yeah, that's how
they put them up. They'll get hot, they'll get cold, but they were able to defend at a championship level when they got Drew Holiday and everyone was healthy, of course. So, tying to that point, I also think I think Chet also has kind of the personality to want to be the do-it-all guy instead of the scorer. Because right now he's averaging like 15 to 17 points a game. There's no reason he can't be a 20-plus point per game scorer in the NBA. Like he has that level of skill. Draymond never had that level of offensive talent to go with it. But when I watch Chet, like, he likes to hit shots because everyone likes the feeling of hitting a shot. I don't think he really cares. I don't think he's really wired with if I don't get my touches and my shots, I'm going to stop playing hard. I think he's pretty comfortable being this do-it-all guy. Like, I think he likes playing that style of basketball.
And that's kind of how he's always played. Like in high school, he's a little bit younger than Suggs, but he was like second fiddle to Jalen Suggs. in high school until he was a senior. Then he goes to Gonzaga, and they always have a lot of offensive talent. So like they ran stuff through Chet, but not everything was run through Chet. So he's kind of used to being this guy anyway. And I mean, he's almost like a modern version of AD in a lot of ways that can probably shoot the three a little bit better, but similar-ish skill sets where they can do it all. Like they
Chris Bosh.
Chris Bosh. They don't do anything at like a super elite level offensively, but they do everything like at a good to great-ish level. I'd say he's maybe a little bit better of a playmaker than AD, but you get where I'm going with this.
Sure.
And the right zone for him, just as it was for AD, is being the number 2/number 3 to a true like alpha type scorer playmaker.
So are the Warriors fucked then? Like in this offseason, just like now we got a dynasty? Like there's just no chance? No chance. It's over. Fire everybody.
I don't agree with that. I mean, I think that's going to be the takeaway from a lot of people. But look, in this, the Denver series felt like OKC breaking through in a lot of ways. And I think you can see that.
That was their like growing up moment.
It was their 2015 Grizzlies series, as it was, the Warriors, same thing. And now it feels like they've reached like a different plane. So maybe they can't, maybe the Warriors can't compete. But at the same time, that Denver team did take them to 7 games with about 4.5 players. Like I don't think they're incredible. They're a really, really good basketball team, but I still trust, given health and given not a lot of drop off from the main guys, I still do trust the kind of the infrastructure of the Warriors to be able to get it done over what would probably take 7 games. It would be an incredibly difficult series, and it'd be like the last stand, the last dance, whatever you want to call it. But I do think they have one more run like that in them, and I felt like it could have been this year, but, take the offseason, improve the roster in the right ways, and I still think there's a chance. The Thunder would be the favorite, but...
Who was the Warriors' kryptonite, the 2015 and 2016 Warriors?
I mean, like I said, the Grizzlies and then the Thunder, obviously, in 2016.
I got someone else for you. Spurs.
Okay. Yeah.
San Antonio Spurs were the boogeyman for the Warriors for an incredibly long time. Like until 2016, Steph Curry had never won a game in San Antonio.
It was like 30 something straight.
And I'm going to leave out the Don Nelson years and other stuff, but like literally Steph had never in his career won in San Antonio. And to your point, it spanned to the late 90s or the early 00s. So it was a long time that happened. And I remember my feeling around that time. Anytime they played the Spurs, it was like the young athletic team, which was the Warriors, going against like you ever play pickup against guys who've just played together for 20 years?
Yes.
Like they know exactly. Yeah, they know exactly like every movement is like they have it down to a T. They know exactly when like one guy's looking one way is going to cut the other way. And they were just a smarter old man team who always gave the Warriors fits. Tim Duncan's obviously an all-time great, but like Manu Ginobili was just always an issue for the Warriors, and just execution. Even Pop would give Kerr fits because he came up with the defensive guarding Steph like on his hip, basically daring him to drive to take away the sidestep three. That would frustrate Steph forever.
Pop would call a timeout anytime Steph got an open three. It's the funniest thing. You can go back and watch these games. Anytime
he was the first one who did it. Everyone started copying it, by the way.
He would pop off the bench and immediately call a timeout every single time because he knew what it meant if Steph got going. He saw it firsthand in 2013. He's like, that's never happening again.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you're right. And so I bring this up to say the Warriors' best chance versus this team is to be what the Spurs were to them. And there's some evidence that this is feasible because they lost twice against they lost 2 of the 3 matchups against the Warriors this year. And the one that they won, Steph didn't play, and it looked like they were going to lose most of the game until it got down to, closing time, and the Warriors had no one to run a play for.
And all that was pre-Jimmy.
Yeah, it was all pre-Jimmy. So that's where I'm like 50-50 on like how much I can read into it. But the Warriors did pose kind of a stylistic issue for them where they play their, read and react motion offense, takes away some of the juice that the Thunder have defensively, because the Thunder are set up to just destroy you if you're a pick and roll team.
Pick and roll and ISO.
They can switch everything. Every one of their players can guard ISO. They just dare you. to go that way.
They are very ball focused, where like they
Yeah.
are going to plug the gaps. They want essentially 10 eyes on the ball at all times,
Mhm.
but that leaves them vulnerable to a lot of the screening and the cutting and the off ball stuff that the Warriors want to do, because Thunder want to get you on an island. You're not going to go by the first guy. And even if you do, we got 3 more bodies there to swallow it up. And that's not how the Warriors play. It never will be, as long as Steph is around. So yeah, it presents a little bit of a stylistic issue, as you're saying, for the Thunder.
And then secondarily, Wiggins guarded Shea pretty well, although he did get 50 on him one of the games.
Yeah.
I would say Draymond, though, also causes a big issue for the Thunder's offense, just because like they're not a big team, and nobody plays like cat and mouse on the pick and roll better than Draymond, even to this day. It's a lot of, I'm going to force Shea into just mid-range shots, and he's going to make a lot of them because he's fucking amazing, but kind of takes them out of flow of their offense. What I'm saying is the Warriors are kind of set up to match up as well with them as one could hope to.
Yeah, and the Warriors have never been scared to make guys take dare shots. And if the Thunder have been vulnerable to one thing, it's like, yeah, you're okay with letting Lou Dort launch threes. You're okay. I mean, Caruso, to a certain extent, like they don't play a ton of like.
If you're going to lose on Caruso and Dort hitting 10 threes, it's like one of those, like, it's just like, well, I mean, what did you want me to do? Let Shea go off? Like, you know,
right. Totally.
So I would say, I guess my only thing here is, look, we haven't seen them play with Jimmy, but I can't imagine that the Warriors are now a worse matchup against them.
I don't think so.
It tells me that the Warriors need to lean in even heavier, which is, it gets back to the same point we've always made. Lean into players who fit your system, find better versions of them this offseason, and I think you have a reasonable chance against the Thunder. They may take another step and be unbeatable next year, but I don't know. The way to beat them is to do it with old guys who are really smart, who can make them think. You're not going to beat them in their own type of game, is I guess the main point I'm getting at. The Spurs never got the opportunity to see if they could beat the Warriors in the playoffs. In 2015, they lost in the first round. They just won the title the year before. And the next year, it looked like we were going to get that matchup when you got the
under Spurs.
Exactly. But then they lost. And then the next year, we actually did get the matchup, but that was the KD Warriors, and Kawhi obviously goes down in game 1. I don't think they would have beaten the Warriors, but I do feel pretty confident they would have given the Warriors a better fight than the Cavs gave the Warriors in that finals.
Yeah, it would have been 6 games probably. It would have been a much tougher series than it ended up being.
They were never beating the KD Warriors, though.
No,
Especially I would have liked to have seen what they'd have looked like against the non-KD Warriors. That could have been scary.
Sure. Yeah, it stylistically would have posed issues. So, all right, let's play a quick bill, huh? Light Years Podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineups, whether it's points, rebounds, assists. Take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. So we obviously got Knicks Pacers tonight, game 5, as we said earlier. I think I'm going with the Tyrese Halliburton. His points, rebounds, assists right now is only 36.5. That feels incredibly low. I think I saw that right. So that's an easy add for me. I think Brunson will probably have a big game 5 with the season on the line, and he's at 41.5. So I'm going more on that as well. And then a home game 5 with the season on the line. I could see Thibodeau getting a little bit creative, and this guy's been getting a couple more minutes per night lately. Landry Shamet's line is 4.5. I'm going to go the more on that as well. I'm going to say he hits 2 threes, provides a little bit of a spark. I don't know if New York wins the game, but I could see him being like a role player hero in this scenario.
Going the opposite. I'm going the opposite way, my man. I think Indiana's going to run them out of the gym.
I could see it
tonight. I'm going more on, which I've done all series, and it's got me a win 3 out of 4 games so far. I'm going more on the accumulation of points, rebounds, and assists for Tyrese Halliburton.
36.5 feels so low for him. It feels like he could hit that in the first half.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's going to be a scoring night or an assist night or a rebound night or just what last game was, an all of it night, But I do feel pretty comfortable he's going to hit more.
Yeah, it feels so easy for him at this point. So download the app today. and use code LIGHTYEARS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LIGHTYEARS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Guys, I want to tell you about our friends over at BodySpec real quick. Guys, fitness, most important thing. You get older like Tommy and me, where you turn 50 like Tommy, you start wondering about how you can stay in shape and get back to what you used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one way you start your fitness journey is be honest with yourself about where your body is right now. And so you can stand on the scale, and that's cool. But like, you know, you weigh 190 pounds, all 190 pounds not equal. You know, you could be 190 pounds in the greatest shape of your life, or you could be 190 pounds, 30 pounds overweight based upon your muscle mass, lean muscle mass, all that sort of thing. So our friends at BodySpec, what they've done is they've made the DEXA scan affordable for all. So DEXA scan is a highly accurate method of measuring your body's composition. That's where you can really figure out, are you in shape? Is everything working the way it should be, or is there things you can do? So find out, you know, body fat percentage. We all hear about pro athletes' body fat percentage, lean muscle mass, visceral fat, you know, the fat around your organs. DEXA scan tells you all that stuff. Pro athletes do them. You know, the Warriors go and get them done every 6 months to check in where they're at, for example. And what BodySpec has done is they've made it affordable. So instead of paying $300, $400, you can actually get a DEXA scan for only $45 with the code LIGHTYEARS45. That's code LIGHTYEARS45 at BodySpec. Go get that scan and start your fitness journey. On the Warriors point, look, we're still a couple weeks away from, like, right now people are like laying the groundwork for the offseason, but it's still kind of like bullshit season publicly. You know what I mean? Like, the good stuff's coming basically after the NBA finals. So, but with that said, I did kind of raise my eyebrow when Sham said this yesterday.
Am I accurate in saying this is going to be an active summer for the NBA?
Pat, this is the most, I think, anticipation team executives have had over an offseason. I think this is going to be the craziest offseason of I don't want to say all time. We just came off a trade deadline. I think it was the craziest of all time. I think this offseason might be the most craziest ever, because I think there's so many.
Most craziest ever. MCE. Most craziest ever, dude.
Most crazy offseason ever. Considering that Luka got traded at the deadline out of nowhere, like, I mean, that's a high bar to clear.
It
like,
is.
what does most crazy offseason mean to you, I guess, is where I want to start this. Because to me, Giannis and KD getting traded is not crazy. I feel like we see that coming.
We do see it coming. I think there's a couple things that roll into it. Number one, I feel like we hear some version of this every spring, like, oh, like, get ready for this summer, it's going to be crazy, and then
turn those notifications on.
Yeah. There's always like a little bit of a letdown, but I do think, number one, we know there's, like you said, we know there's a chance of a Giannis move. KD is basically just a matter of where he ends up. Nobody knows yet, but it feels like he's not going to be in Phoenix come middle of July or August. Oh God. Look, I don't want to. That requires certain things that I'm not willing to confront yet, like trading Draymond or trading Jimmy Butler. So let's not go there quite yet. But I do think the door is always open for Kevin. He should know that by now. But I do think this is the next NBA season is the first time where the new CBA is fully in effect, if I'm not incorrect, right? There's a lot of, essentially, it's not a hard cap, but essentially it is a hard cap, the new way that the salary cap is going to operate. And I think a lot of team executives and a lot of owners are scared of the restrictions that come with that. So there's more teams that are going to be willing to move money, especially if they don't feel like they're in a position to contend for a title. They're going to be looking for ways to get off contracts. We're already seeing that with the Celtics, where they're saying, you know, Kristaps, at least one of Kristaps and Drew probably has to go. And they're probably even open to hearing things on Derek White if the offer is right. I think we're going to hear more and more of that as the draft gets closer, as free agency gets closer. So I don't think it's a crazy thing to hear and for Shams to say, but again, I'll believe it when I see it. Like I've heard this too many times to like take the bait or fall for the banana in the tailpipe again.
Kuminga for Giannis. Get ready. No. So I have two thoughts. The CBA one I completely agree with. I keep thinking about this. The Warriors didn't lose claim free agency technically. It was a 6-team sign-in trade that had players moving in all different directions. What the new CBA has really done is it's made player acquisitions way more complicated. So I think we're going to see a ton of that. Even with the Warriors, we know that. If they end up signing and trading Kuminga, odds are it's going to be a 3-team deal or a 4-team deal.
Huh?
Kuminga goes to a team who wants him. Assets from that team go towards another team. Warriors compile stuff and they get the player they actually want in exchange for it. Because you can't just assume like, okay, great. Chicago wants Kuminga, but they don't want to give up Kobe White. Okay, well, we don't really want anything else you have. Okay, but what can you give us? And can we find a third team who has something we do want? Like that's what I think is going to be a more realistic scenario than like what we've been discussing, which is like, a direct 1-for-1 type of trade scenario, right? And that's ignoring all like the base year compensation complication stuff. To me, that's not crazy. That's just complicated, I don't think like Kuminga moving is crazy because we've heard about it for a while. I don't think KD moving is crazy because we've heard about it for a while. Friend of the show, Cam Johnson on the move, not crazy. We've heard about it for a while, right? To me, crazy is Luka. Because you could have asked me what would have happened at the trade deadline, and I would have given you 100 predictions before that, maybe 500.
Luka would literally have never even crossed my mind as somebody that could have been on the move. Like the thought wouldn't have even occurred.
Yeah, no, that's my point. So to me, crazy is it's not is Giannis going to officially leave. It's someone who we're not even discussing being moved. And this is where I actually think OKC ties into it. I do wonder if OKC makes certain teams in the West reevaluate where they're at and be like, you know what? They took a step backwards. They built that thing organically. I mean, Houston did this too. Maybe the smart move for us is to trade Ja Morant and see if we can rip off the Sacramento Kings, because they're the exact type of idiot who would do that, and bet against them doing anything good and get us a bunch of, not just first round picks, but top 10 picks, because I have very little faith in the Kings to do it. And
that is the most likely Ja destination now that you said it. A Ja, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk
at the 4.
Yeah. Somehow they keep all those guys around and they bring in Ja.
Just so many buckets.
Scoring 145 a game, giving up 150.
Yeah. But I mean, my point is that would be a surprise to me, is like Memphis, who's a good team, who has good young players who you would think, okay, Ja's 25. I think he's 26 next season. Jaren's 25. He'll be 26 next season. Okay, maybe they want to retool around that. No, crazy as I'm going, there's not really any avenues for us to make this team good enough to compete with OKC. Let's tear this down. Let's get a ransom for them because they're young. Like Ja being traded at 26 can get you way more than you trying with him for 3 years, never getting past the second round, and then trading him at 29, a year away from him expecting a supermax, So crazy would be Memphis being like, let's see if we can find a sucker. Let's see if we can get our own version of the PG trade. And let's we'll probably be bad next year and the year after that. And then you know what? In 2027, we might have our version of an OKC super team.
Yeah, and I think specifically Memphis, an organization like that would be inclined to think that way, because they are very good at drafting. They've struck gold in the draft no matter where they're picking. So, and they're a smaller market. I think smaller market teams are like have to move that way anyway, but maybe even increasingly so with new CBA. And so, yeah, I don't think, and that's the thing. Like, I guess my overall feeling is I don't think anything's crazy with the new CBA, because nobody really knows exactly how it's going to operate until it operates in its full effect. So like nothing would feel that out of the ordinary. All I know from everything that I've heard is that teams are incredibly scared of the restrictions that come with being in the second apron or executing
even
certain type
above
of
the
moves.
first apron.
Yeah.
I'm like looking at all the moves the Warriors can make, and like 80% of the ones we talk about are contingent with them being below the first apron at the time of acquisition.
Yep.
So I understand the whole like, oh, I want to do that. Oh, it takes me into the first apron. Okay, I can't do it because legally I can't do it. So I kind of understand it from that standpoint. But yeah, no. I think you nailed it. I think that's right. I think the new CBA basically puts everything on the table in a way that it probably wasn't prior. So, and then the Supermaxes, like going back to the Grizzlies point, Ja has like 3 years left on his contract, so they're not up against a decision with him. Jaren Jackson's a year away, from the contract. Jaren's awesome. Right now, Jaren is making, I think next year he only gets 22, but he signed a 4-year deal that was like 27 a year, and it was actually declining. So like year 1 was 30 and year 3 is like 23 or 24, 22 or something like that. He's for sure going to want like 50. And Jaren Jackson making 27 a year is a different proposition than Jaren Jackson making 50 plus a year on a Supermax type situation. And maybe internally they're like, you know what? We love him as a player, but we don't want to pay him that much money. It like in some ways it's like what Miami was doing with Jimmy, where they're like, you know what? If Jimmy was willing to sign for 40, 35, he'd probably still be a Heat right now, that sort of thing. So like maybe a team like Memphis is looking at this from the standpoint of let someone else deal with Jaren's next contract and let's see if we can rip someone off with Ja. We'll be bad next year, but we'll have all the picks in the world, and like that worked for the Spurs, that worked for the Thunder, that worked for the Rockets. There maybe to me, those are the type of things. It worked
for the Mavericks. It worked for the Mavericks. I'm kidding. But no, and I made this point when we talked about Jaren, I think the last time I was on, the 2026 draft, there's like potentially at least 3 franchise changing guys, depending on how you feel about them. You got Cam Boozer, got AJ DeBansa, and you got Darren Peterson. But yeah, like they are all guys who profile, and we'll see how their college seasons go. You never know where they're going to end up.
Right.
But all those guys profile.
Remember when RJ Barrett was that guy, and then you saw him at Duke, you're like, okay, he's fine, but
yeah, he's
franchise changing.
Right.
Nuts.
But especially in the summer before you actually see these guys play in college, I think a lot of these teams like a Memphis or like even Sacramento's never going to think that way, but like teams kind of in that play-in range, they could talk themselves into, you know what, this is actually the year to tank. Let's try to get into that top 3, top 4 for 1 year. Maybe we get that franchise chasing guy and we're immediately ascending again. So yeah, I think you could see a lot of those teams in kind of like the 7 through 11 bracket of each conference going, this is the year to tank. Let's move off some guys that keep us in that range and just go for 18 wins next year.
I mean, Philly's a wild card. I don't know how I feel about that, but they could go on, since they have the 3rd pick, they could be a buyer, or they could decide they want to go the other way and see who wants to take like Joel or PG. I don't know. Like, I don't think they're going to go the other way.
Does anybody want those guys?
Price gets low enough. Do you get curious?
I mean, look, if you're I don't even think it's possible, but if you could keep like Jimmy and Draymond and obviously Steph and get PG, yeah, sure, I'm interested. I mean, PG's not the player that he used to be, and that's a really old team, but PG's your 3rd scorer at that point. He gets to spot up and shoot threes and play some defense. I don't hate that, but it's also a lot of money, and I don't think it's actually even feasible under the new CBA.
I'm out on that. I'm out on that, and I also don't think it's feasible. But yeah, just thinking through it, like, okay, Denver, they're probably going to move MPJ. To me, that's not crazy. But I'm just like, there's just a lot of teams who have guys where they're probably going to want to reshuffle it. And I guess the interesting part is if there's that many players that teams are willing to move, do the prices become more palatable for Uncle Joe?
I think so. How could they not, right?
Because it's a supply demand thing, right? Yep. Like it's one of those, all right, if MPJ is the only player that's being dangled, they're going to be like, we want 3 picks,
Mm-hmm.
If it's him, Cam Johnson, like all these other options, then it's, and his contract's kind of big right now, then it's like, all right, well, we'll take whatever we can get,
It's an arms race at that point. Like you said, it's supply and demand. So yeah, it is going to. I do think the craziest. I don't know. I do think it's going to be an incredibly interesting offseason with a lot of guys ending up places that nobody would have had on their radar today or even a couple weeks from now.
And I do think the crazy is going to come in the form of a team we're not talking about. Although I just talked about the Grizzlies, but like it's not going to be Kevin Durant. You know, it's going to be someone. It's like it's going to be Devin Booker. Wait, they're trading Devin Booker. You know, like maybe that. You know, like that sort of thing. It's going to be someone you're not seeing coming. Cleveland, 2 years in a row playoff disappointments.
Yep.
Is this the year that they're like, Darius, you're awesome, but the too small guard thing is limiting us? It's time to move you. You know. Like, that doesn't help the Warriors.
What is Minnesota going to do? What are the Clippers going to do? Like, I feel like they might be in the market for reshuffling the decks a little bit. So I think everybody is. Most teams. It's funny. I would actually say the Warriors are one of the more stable teams out there right now. Like they basically know unless Giannis says I'm going to the Warriors, Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond will probably all be on the team next year. You know, whereas I don't think most cores around the league are like that, even if they had a deep playoff run.
I mean, and maybe honestly, like I'm not going to do this right now, but like depending who's trying to be moved, maybe Draymond's not on the team next year.
I could see it.
Because it's pretty impossible for the Warriors to get to like the higher contract guys without including Jimmy or Draymond. And I don't know. I could see a world where, let me think of a player here. I can see a world where a Kawhi Leonard becomes available because the Clippers are just going to say screw it, and the Warriors are like Draymond and Kuminga. Sure. Then the Clippers get what they want, which is a young piece, and Draymond probably gets moved to a third team. Like I don't think that'll happen, but I could see them being like, okay, that's an opportunity to add a player who really takes us to another level. It could cost us Draymond, but it's worth it. Like I can't see a world where they're trading Draymond for like Jared Allen or something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, maybe Draymond's the outgoing salary in like a Jaren Jackson Jr. trade. Not necessarily going to Memphis, but like as part of a 3-team thing where Jaren comes back to the Warriors, Draymond goes to a team that contends, and then the third team gets, younger pick. You know what I mean? Gets something like that. I don't know.
But like, maybe the I don't think it'll happen, but maybe Dallas is like, we need to actually commit to Cooper Flagg's timeline. And so AD, yeah, we want Kuminga. We want one of your draft picks. And then obviously the Warriors would have to include Draymond just to get to the salary number, Sure. Maybe something like that. Like to me, that stuff starts getting crazy because that's something that's not actually being discussed as like a realistic thing. Whereas like every day you turn on ESPN and it's like, where will Kevin Durant go? Like, all right, we get it. He's moving.
Yep. Exactly. No, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm genuinely like, and I think I've said a version of this before.
Get ready for Kuminga to be re-signed and them saying they're willing to play.
I'm not going there today. We already talked about this offline. I'm not going there today. I don't want to bring the mood of this thing. I don't want to bring the mood of this down. I'm more genuinely excited for an offseason from a Warriors perspective specifically than I have been in a long time because it feels like they're just minor tweaks away from being like a real problem and being a top 4 seed in the West. And then you take your chances. Like, yes, OKC's this juggernaut, as we've just said, but all it takes is, you beat them in a series, even if they're fully healthy, or one injury at the wrong time. We saw that with the Warriors in these playoffs. Like maybe Jalen.
Boston last year. Everyone's like, Boston's going to be a dynasty. And like, that sucks. That really sucks for them. Mm-hmm. But like, you can't just quit because they win a title and they're young,
Yeah. Like maybe
to your point to the Warriors, everyone was like, the Warriors are going to for sure repeat here. And then what happens? The worst case scenario, it's Steph at the wrong time,
Yep. So. Yeah. Maybe it's Jalen Williams turning an ankle at the wrong time for 5 games. Like it doesn't even have to be anything extreme. It's just the timing of an injury.
I mean, shit. I thought the Thunder were screwed when Wiggins dunked on Chet and he fractured his hip. I'm like, well, this season's done for them. And he somehow came back. But you can see a scenario where Chet gets hurt at this time. And then you're like, oh.
I mean, he's already missed a ton of games due to injury. He's just a really skinny, frail guy. He profiles as a guy that might just be somewhat injury prone over the course of his career. Even if it's not like catastrophic injuries, it could just be like little nicks and bruises, similar to like a Porzingis has had over the course of his 9-10-year career.
Yeah. We'll end it there. I'm excited to see how it plays out. I'm excited for the highs and lows of it.
Oh God,
Excited to get disappointed.
it's just gonna be
I'm ready to get hurt again.
Same. It's gonna be the continuous. It's so over. We're so back. Yin and
Yeah.
yang meme for the next month and a half.
Gonna have to pull the chair out again.